3 sinister and spine-chilling true Lighthouse horror stories revealed. Unexplained terrors await. The wind howled through the battered trees, shrieking like a banshee, as Sarah stepped onto the rickety porch of the old house. It groaned underfoot, much like her heart heavy with loss. Marlin's Cove was supposed to be a fresh start, a new chapter for her and her 2 children, Ethan and Lily. Instead, shadows danced in the corners of her vision, and unseen eyes seemed to bore into her back. The abandoned lighthouse loomed ominously nearby, its dark silhouette cutting a jagged line against the fading sky, the townspeople's whispers haunting her thoughts. Stay away from the lighthouse. It's cursed. Each night, as twilight cloaked the town in darkness, the uneasy feeling that something was waiting for them gnawed at her. Inside the house, the walls creaked painfully, like the moans of the earth itself, and when the lights flickered, it was as if the very spirits of the dead were trying to communicate. Ethan and Lily's laughter had faded into nervous whispers, their bright eyes clouded with fear, as they began to speak of a voice calling to them, a sweet, beckoning sound drifting from the lighthouse. "Mom, it says it needs us," Ethan said one evening, his small frame trembling. Lily, clutching her stuffed rabbit, nodded vigorously, her eyes wide and scared. Panic gripped Sarah. This isn't real, she thought. Kids say weird things to cope, right? But deep down, she sensed the truth creeping closer, as she barely managed to keep the facade strong. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days bled into nights marked by screaming winds and pounding rain, each sound bouncing off the walls of the decaying house. The lighthouse's light pulsed in the darkness, a sinister heartbeat that seemed to synchronize with the children's increasing dread. Meanwhile, the town's people wore blank, hollow expressions, their eyes reflecting a mix of fear and something akin to regret when Sarah approached with questions. The sheriff brushed her aside, a man weathered and jaded by years of neglect. People go missing around that lighthouse. You'd be wise to mind your kids and stay far away. Here, their laughter and play had been replaced with anxiety, the bright days slowly turning dark as the shadows loomed larger. Whispers stole through the corridors, brushing against her ears like icy fingers, leaving her with chills that ran deep. Old portraits of her husband's family lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow her, judging her intrusion into a place filled with silence and sorrow. Heart racing, and unable to shake the sense of dread gnawing at her, Sarah decided she had to confront the lighthouse. She could feel it calling an exit from the weighted reality she tried to ignore. On a stormy night, ropes of wind lashed against her, urging her forward, as she approached the creaking dock leading there. With each step, the air grew colder, thicker with secrets. A shadowy figure materialized at the doorway, visage obscured. Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat. "You shouldn't have come here," it whispered, the words curling around her spine like icy fingers. Terror slammed into her, the lighthouse now a malevolent sentinel, holding the truth she so desperately wanted to uncover. What had claimed her husband? What did it want from her children? The wind howled again, and in that moment, the weight of Marlin's Cove settled heavily upon her shoulders. Her heart thundered, and she stood frozen, caught between the eerie glow of the lighthouse and the haunting shadows of her past. The truth lay just beyond her reach, waiting. The figure lingered, its presence a dark mass against the lighthouse's flickering light. Sarah's pulse raced like thunder, reverberating in her ears. She struggled to breathe, each inhalation tinged with the scent of salt and decay. Something was fundamentally wrong here. The lighthouse creaked, the sound echoing off the rocks, as if it too were trying to warn her. "Who are you?" Sarah managed to ask, her voice barely breaking the wind's howl. The shadow shifted, revealing glimpses of a gaunt face, eyes that shimmered with an unsettling familiarity. "You don't recognize me?" The voice was like broken glass, cutting through the thick mist of fear. It felt as if the air itself paused, holding on to each word. "You will soon, Sarah." A chill ran down her spine. Before she could react, the figure retreated into the shadows, beckoning her into the lighthouse's gaping maw. It felt like a trap rather than an invitation. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, but her children's images of their frightened faces darted through her mind. They could be drawn toward the beacon of danger, lured into something they couldn't understand. Sarah bit back her fear and stepped toward the entrance. As she crossed the threshold, the air thickened, wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. Inside, the lighthouse was dimly lit, the walls lined with peeling paint and ancient debris. Dust motes floated like lost souls in the scant beams of light, and shadows danced ominously in the corners. The sensation of being watched rushed over her, the very essence of the place seeming to swirl with anxiety and rage. "Mom!" Ethan's voice echoed, the word distorted and hollow. Her heart dropped to her stomach, the panic surging through her. "Where are you?" "Ethan!" she yelled, her voice slicing through the oppressive silence. She ran deeper into the lighthouse, each footfall echoing her mounting dread. The winding staircase twisted upward, promising both answers and horrors untold. The haunting call of her children, faint yet urgent, drew her higher still. Suddenly, a heavy door slammed shut behind her, the sound reverberating like thunder. She felt trapped, an unwelcome guest in a house of illusions. She turned, gasping, but the door was unyielding, sealed by a force she could hardly comprehend. "Help!" she cried, her voice rising in desperation. "Ethan! Lily! Can you hear me?" Their laughter, once carefree and joyous, was now replaced with terrified weeping. It was a sound that clawed at her insides. She pressed on, navigating the narrow steps, where each creak ignited fresh terror. The lighthouse swayed slightly. Did it move? She reached for the railing, her hand trembling, and suddenly, memories flooded her mind. Her husband, standing at the edge, smiling as the beacon of light danced in the waves. But then the images shifted. She saw the chilling day when he didn't return. The void of his absence consumed her. Sarah, the voice wasn't her children's anymore. It was a low, mournful tone that resonated with her deepest fears. "You came for me. You've come to finish what was started." The words curled around her, sealing her fate. She whipped around to find nothing but the shadows, feeling as if the walls themselves were closing in, imprisoning her in a cycle of grief and horror. "Leave them alone!" she shouted into the empty darkness, a flicker of defiance igniting her courage. But what could defiance do in the face of an ancient terror? The lighthouse began to tremble, and the walls pulsed like a heartbeat. She stumbled back, breath quickening in terror. Shadows swirled, blending into a shape so familiar, yet grotesque, an echo of a love lost beneath layers of despair and tragedy. "Sarah, join us!" The air crackled with a cold that felt like an eternal winter, and the lighthouse quaked as the memories began to pull her in. In that moment, Sarah realized she was no longer just battling for her children's lives. She was fighting against the torrent of grief that threatened to swallow her whole. Her resolve hardened, and she screamed out loud enough for the spirits within to hear. "You want to take me too?" Fierce determination reignited within her as she prepared to confront the shadows of her past. The light outside flickered rapidly, drawing her attention back to the doorway once more. "What if they can save you?" A whisper taunted from the dark recesses of the lighthouse. What did it mean? Sarah's heart raced as she rushed toward the door, desperate to find her children. But as she turned the handle, it refused to budge. A low growl rippled through the air as the shadows surged, and dread gripped her throat, tightening like a noose. "Your children are closer than you think." Would she unlock the mysteries of the lighthouse and save her children, or would she become just another lost soul, trapped within its dark embrace? The pulse of the lighthouse quickened, reverberating through her bones, and in a breathless moment, she hesitated. Was this the moment where everything would change? With terrifying certainty, Sarah knew she was about to find out. The lighthouse shuddered again, echoing a sinister heartbeat that reverberated in Sarah's chest. Shadows slithered around her, whispering in a cacophony of hisses and sighs, each word laced with dread. She could almost hear her own fear, a tangible thing that clawed at her throat. The shadows twisted and morphed, forming a nightmarish tapestry of lost souls, desperate and hollow. Ethan. Lily. She howled again, her voice breaking, each note mingling with the despair that enveloped her. Just then, a flash of light from above caught her eye, illuminating the crumbling staircase spiraling upward. The soft glow beckoned her a glimmer of hope or yet another illusion. With every ounce of courage, she climbed the steps, the splintered wood beneath her feet protesting with each heavy tread. As she ascended, the air thickened, pressing in like a vice. The laughter echoed again, but this time it was joined by a sound more wretched, a chorus of terrified cries, merging with her children's names, distorted and twisted into anguish that pierced her very soul. She reached the top, breathless. The door to the lantern room loomed before her, heavy and foreboding, its edges blackened with the stain of time. She didn't hesitate, shoving against it. To her relief, it creaked open, revealing a space drenched in shadow. The lantern flickered weakly, casting long, skeletal shadows that wavered like specters waiting to pounce, but what stood in the center of the room turned her blood to ice. There, cradled in the grasp of the shadows, were her children. "Mom?" Ethan's voice trembled, a painful mix of relief and fear. But it wasn't just hope she read on his face, it was confusion, as if he didn't understand why she was there. "Help us. Hold on. I'm coming." She rushed forward, but the shadows went wild, swirling around her feet like venomous vipers, trying to pull her in. The weight of their despair bore down on her, each caress sending icy tendrils up her legs. "Don't!" Lily cried, her eyes wide, reflecting all the horror that swirled around them. "They're here for you, Mom." The shadows surged at her, howling in a cacophony that mingled with memories of loss and despair. Each ghostly wail called to her heart, as if echoing her own grief, each voice filled with the weight of untold stories. She could feel her husband's words curling back into her consciousness, reminding her of promises made and broken. "Join us. Why are you doing this?" Sarah shouted, her own voice trembling. "I'm not afraid." But deep down, fear wrapped her in its suffocating grip. In that moment, the lantern flared brighter, dispelling some of the shadows, revealing an altar-like pedestal. Upon it lay an ancient book, its pages stained and brittle, secrets bound in the fears of all who had entered the lighthouse before her. She felt an urge to grasp it, to uncover what they had done, what she needed to know. The shadows hissed and recoiled, their anguish intensifying, feeding off her fear. Suddenly, a harsh wind howled through the lantern room, extinguishing the last flicker of light. She was plunged into darkness. "Mom!" Ethan's voice came again, a desperate plea that echoed in her mind, growing fainter. "We're scared." The shadows writhing around her felt colder, almost tangible. "Join us," they crooned once more, and she could feel herself being pulled, body and soul, toward the darkness, a siren's call promising an end to her suffering. But as a sudden realization pierced through her panic, a truth that laid bare the depths of her fear, she knew she had a choice. With a roar, Sarah reached for the book, heart pounding, ready to face whatever dark secrets it held. "No!" she cried, her voice echoing defiantly through the darkness. In that instant, the shadows shrieked, coiling violently around her torso, trying to drag her into their depths. Would she unveil the truth and save her children, or would she spiral into despair, abandoning the light forever? Just then, the book flared with an intense light, illuminating every corner of the room, and for a moment, it felt like every lost soul hovered in the balance, waiting for the decision she was about to make. "Breathe," she thought. "What if I could find the way out?" The light engulfed her, leaving her breathless. What realm had she stepped into? What fate awaited them all in the dark, unforgiving grip of the lighthouse? As the blinding light enveloped her, Sarah felt an otherworldly force tugging at her, an energy that radiated both warmth and dread. The whispers of the shadows morphed into a deafening roar, each hiss now a scream begging for release. She clutched the ancient book, its surface slick with an unidentifiable substance, and balanced on the precipice of knowledge and despair. What poured into her mind was more than words, it was a torrent of memories, fragments of past tragedies woven together in a mosaic of human loss. Faces appeared, anguished and pleading. Each one was a soul trapped in this wretched place, echoing the same pain, the same torment. "Mom!" Ethan's voice broke through, thin and fragile, as if the weight of the shadows threatened to steal it away completely. "You have to help us." "I'm trying. I have to figure this out." Sarah shouted, her heart racing as she fought against the shadows wrapping tighter around her. She could feel them clawing at her skin like icy fingers, gnawing at her resolve, but she had the book now. The light surged from it, beating back the darkness for brief moments. With every pulse, more secrets spilled forth, stories of those who had succumbed to the lighthouse's call. Their cries bridged the gap between the past and present, each tale a cautionary whisper. "The light is a curse, you must know the truth." "What truth?" Sarah gasped, shaking. The weight of the book was nearly unbearable, but she steadied herself, flipping through the brittle pages. Images swirled in her mind, a vortex of anguish and despair. She couldn't let herself drown in it. Suddenly, Lily's voice wrenched her back to the moment. "Mom! Please! Don't give in to them." It was a plea, a lifeline reaching into the abyss. Sarah's fingers flew across the pages, desperate, looking for answers. There. A passage glowed beneath her touch, bold and stark. To confront the shadows, one must embrace their own. Only then can the light break the chains. The walls began to tremble, curling around her. Screams became tangible, a chorus of betrayed souls echoing her own fears. They warned her, they begged her. A paralyzing chill swept through the lantern room, tightening its grip like a vice. Her pulse quickened. Could she face her own darkest truths? The ritual of surrender twisted in her gut. Failure would mean attracting the shadows, feeding them like a moth to a flame. Yet what choice did she have? "I want to let you take us," she shouted, fortifying her resolve. The light from the book flickered, casting shadows away from her children, revealing the terror lurking at the edges. But would it be enough? As she inhaled, readying herself to bare her soul, the wind howled wildly around her, whipping through the room like a furious storm. Shadows screamed in wrath, recoiling as if they understood the shift in power. "Hold on, kids!" she cried, racing against the pulse of darkness seeking to devour her heart. "I'm coming." With a deep breath, Sarah pressed down the weight of her pain, transforming it into strength. It boiled within her, a fierce flame igniting the very essence of her being. "I am not afraid." The shadows shrieked, flailing as the light blazed brighter, wrapping around her like armor. She could feel their anguish, their fury, but she was still standing. "You have no power over me." Then, an explosion of brilliance erupted from the book, radiating outward, its waves crashing against the encroaching darkness. The shadows howled, their forms twisting and thrashing as if in agony, but then the light dimmed, flickering uncertainly. Panic surged through her. No! Not now! Sarah's heart raced, fear gripping her throat. She had to finish this. There was no turning back. What was it that held the shadows at bay? As she focused, a horrible realization dawned. Each flicker carried the weight of her memories, her deepest regrets. If she wanted to conquer this darkness, she would have to confront every shard of her soul that haunted her. Would she push through this fight and conquer the terrors that surrounded her? Or would she succumb to the shadows, sealing her fate? With a fearful choice? As the shadows surged once more, their dreadful scream reverberated through the air. "Join us!" And then she felt it, an icy breath brushing her ear, urging her to give in to despair. Her resolve wavered, heart pounding with uncertainty. What dawn awaited Sarah if she dared to look into the abyss? Would the truth offer salvation or absolute doom? The world spun as reality twisted in on itself, a blur of light and shadow. Sarah's heart thundered, each pulse a reminder of the stakes at hand. She forced herself to surface through the noise, clutching the ancient book closer, its warmth now a split-second promise of salvation. It was a fragile promise, one that flickered like the dying glow of the lighthouse beam. "Mom!" Ethan's terrified voice broke through, his words loud and raw amidst the chaos. "You have to be quiet," she shouted. Panic rippled through her, but she couldn't lose focus. The voices, the faces she needed to unearth the truth buried in her own darkness if she stood a chance of saving them, the shadows twisted, dark fingers reaching greedily. They whispered sweetly, weaving delusions that wrapped around her mind, beckoning with enticing lies. Visions flashed, haunting memories she buried deep, regrets she never dared confront. Caught in the throes of that pain, she stood on the edge of surrender. "Face me," she growled into the swirling mass, rage boiling over. Images of her failures, her fears, and the haunting specters of all those lost surged through her. No. She would not let them take her children. She felt the gusts of wind whip around her, as if the storm sought to rip her away from her purpose. Then, the light from the book flared momentarily, illuminating her surroundings. Shadows recoiled but didn't vanish. Instead, they writhed and twisted, forming grotesque shapes that mocked her resolve. Each face that flashed reminded her of a choice left unmade, a love not given. "You claim power over me?" she screamed, shaking off the shadows as they clawed at her. It was then that she understood the gravity of the truth. It wasn't just about facing the darkness, it was about accepting her own past. Would she let the pain of her failures define her, or could she claim that very pain as her strength? She recalled her mother's words, echoing through the fog of despair, "Accept your shadows, and let them enlighten your soul." As the shadows surged again, enchanting whispers reminded her of the moments she wished could be erased. "Join us, you belong to us," they crooned, teasing at the edges of her sanity. But each fleeting memory filled her more with fury than fear. She grabbed hold of a memory the day she lost herself to despair and instead of crumbling under its weight, transformed it. "No!" she yelled against the tide of darkness. "I am not what you make me." The light surged brighter, cascading through the air like a storm of energy. It burned brightly, infused with her resolve, sending shockwaves through the darkness. Shadows screeched, thrashing as the radiant energy encircled her, shielding her and her children from their grasp. "Ethan! Lily," she cried, desperation coloring her voice. "Hold on to me. We will not fall." A celestial power formed, swelling within her like a furnace. She steeled herself for the confrontation that lay ahead. The moment would come when she would wrestle with the darkness embodied in her past, but first she had to unleash the fury of the light she held. The shadows, trembling at the surge of strength, whispered more urgently now. "It's too much, you cannot bear it, let go." They promised sanctuary, a sweet oblivion free from struggle. But as they coiled closer, she held firm. "I won't let fear drown me," she shouted, channeling everything she had into the radiant blast. For a heartbeat, the room reverberated with a clarity that sliced through the fog of terror, and then, just as she felt she had gained the upper hand, she heard them laughter echoing from the void, a sound both haunting and familiar. "Is that you, Sarah?" came a voice from the shadows, something she recognized but couldn't place, a chilling reminder of what lay at the edge of her soul. Panic surged anew. Who was it? "Face us, Sarah," the shadows beckoned, grinning with sharp teeth. The walls began to close in, their threat more palpable than ever. What stood before her was not just darkness but parts of herself she thought she'd buried. "Embrace it," they taunted. Sarah clenched the book tighter. Could she confront not only the shadows around her but the ones within? Would she unearth the truth buried beneath layers of sorrow, or would this be the moment she lost everything? The darkness thickened, wrapping around Sarah like a damp shroud. Tremors ran through her fingers, but she refused to relinquish the ancient book. It pulsed with warmth, a stark contrast to the taunting coldness encircling her. Shadows danced at the edge of her consciousness, their laughter a maddening symphony that mixed with her pounding heartbeat. "Mom!" Ethan's voice wove through her thoughts, desperate and raw, grounding her momentarily. She could feel his small hand clasping onto her leg, his eyes wide with fear. But even in the warmth of his presence, doubt crept in. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice shaking. "Trust me," she managed, even as doubts flickered in her own mind. She turned to face the swirling void before her, taking a deep breath. "Tell me who you are." The shadows quivered, shifting and morphing into shapes not quite human. "Join us, Sarah," they echoed, their voices a slow, seductive chant. "You can't fight yourself. You must embrace what you've done." Ice invaded her veins. The faces emerged, so familiar yet nightmarish. There was Greg, a victim of her selfish decisions, and Lisa, her best friend betrayed by her silence. Each of them loomed larger, their expressions twisted with pain. "You left us," they whispered, their voices weaving through her mind like a chilling wind. "I loved you," she shouted back, trying to drown out their accusations. "I thought you were safer without me." The shadows skyrocketed, a deafening roar of laughter as they morphed into a vortex of despair. "Your lies mean nothing. You think you can hide from us? Embrace us and find peace." In that taunting moment, she remembered the lesson buried deep in her heart. It surged back, a frantic reminder of what mattered most, her children. "Listen to me," Sarah bellowed, her voice slicing through the thick blanket of despair. "You don't own me." The lights from the book flickered in defiance, intense waves of light pushing back the encroaching darkness. A howl of rage erupted from the vortex, and Sarah felt wind whip around her body, ripping at her clothes, pulling at her spirit. "This is your last chance, Sarah. We will consume you," they shrieked, joy mingling with malice. She could feel Ethan's grip tighten, even Lily's tiny cries pierced the terror around them. With a wave of panic, she clutched the book with renewed strength. "You think I'll sacrifice my love for my past?" she screamed, fueling the words with rage. "This pain is not my punishment, it is my strength." And with one decisive motion, she raised the book high above her head. Light exploded from its pages, piercing through the darkness like divine retribution. The shadows screeched, distorted faces twisting in agony. The warmth radiated outward, healing her broken spirit and her children, wrapping them in a cocoon of brilliance. But just as the room began to shift towards a brighter existence, she felt a dark pull that made her heart race. "What have you done?" The shadows hissed, recoiling in fear. For the first time, they seemed vulnerable. A small victory, the book pulsed with nerves of fury and light, urging her to press on. "I've chosen my path," she bellowed. "You don't rule my life anymore." But as the shadows began to evaporate, Sarah sensed something off. Not all of them were retreating. A pulse of darkness grew, and from it emerged a figure, not just a shadow, but a solid form. An embodiment of all her deepest regrets paced forward, a silhouette of someone she cherished. "Sarah, you cannot escape us," it said with a voice that sent shivers racing down her spine. "You've merely unleashed worse," and in that instant, she realized the nightmares weren't finished with her yet. The ground shook as the darkness surged, ready to swallow her whole. What had she awakened? Would she have the strength to face the real terror awaiting her? The figure stepped forward, and recognition hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just an echo of her guilt, it was Greg, but twisted and wrong. His face was gaunt, eyes hollow and hungry. "You thought you could escape?" he croaked. Ethan whimpered beside her, the sound slicing through the tension. Sarah's heart raced. "No. You're not him." "Oh, but I am," the shadowed apparition hissed, lips curling into a cruel smile. "You know what you've done. You thought you could bury us. You thought you could forget." With each word, the air grew heavier. Shadows reformed, swirling into restless shapes that clawed at the edges of Sarah's mind. She gripped the book tighter, fingers shaking against its warmth, grounding herself against the encroaching dread. "No. You don't control me," she shouted, but her voice wavered. Could she truly stand her ground? The past loomed like a storm cloud, dark and unyielding. Lily's cries pierced through the air. Sarah glanced down to see her daughter, wide-eyed with fear. "Mommy, please." Lily whimpered, her tiny hands clutching Sarah's leg. In that moment, an overwhelming surge of protective instinct blazed within her. "Stay close," Sarah reassured, but doubt gnawed at her resolve. The shadows twisted in on themselves, sharpening into grotesque shapes. "You brought us back, Sarah. This is your doing," they chanted, their voices layered, mocking. "You can't outrun your sins." The walls quaked, and in the chaos, Sarah felt an unexpected shift. A darkness shrank away at the edges of her perception, giving rise to a flickering hope. The book pulsed in her hands again, illuminating the dim space. Light there's power in the light, she thought, a renewed fervor gaining ground. "Stand with me, Ethan. Lily," she cried, urging her children to reconnect. They looked to her, fear etched across their faces, but determination sparked in their eyes. As she raised the book higher, the warmth diffused, resonating in their small circle. "This isn't just my fight, it's ours," she proclaimed, feeling the collective strength amplify between them. The shadows recoiled, their once menacing forms wavering. "You think solidarity can defeat us? You're fools." Greg's voice choked with rage, resonating from the swirling darkness. The echoes of fallen friends swirled and wailed, pulling at Sarah's heart with tendrils of despair. With each long-lost face that emerged, regret cultivated seeds of doubt. "How can you deny what you've done?" they whispered, haunting and sweet. A chill gripped Sarah. She felt the ghostly fingers of another betrayal closing around her throat, constricting her. Would she falter? Would her past consume her entirely? "I want to let you go," she shouted, though uncertainty clung tightly. The shadows laughed, a cacophony of despair, but Sarah stood tall. "I'm ready to face you." The words burst from her lips like a battle cry, raw and authentic. In an instant, the book flashed brighter, sending tendrils of illumination spiraling outward like strands of hope. The resonance filled the room, pushing back the obscuring void. The shadows screamed, their new forms flickering between the past and this nightmarish present, losing cohesion, yet, even as light pressed forward, darkness loomed larger. The solid figure of Greg still stood resolute, eyes blazing with anger. "You think this is over? You've just started a war." Suddenly, from the heart of the shadows, a low rumble of laughter erupted, mocking and cruel. The ground beneath them quaked further as more dark silhouettes gathered behind Greg. "You've opened the door to something more, something worse," he warned, his presence destabilizing. Was this just a skirmish in a much larger battle? What had she unleashed? Tension coiled around them, suffocating. The air vibrated with anticipation as shadows prepared to charge. Sarah's heart thudded. She felt an irrevocable shift in the atmosphere, a pulse of something sinister that hinted at chaos yet to come. Could she truly shield her children from the storm brewing on the horizon? With every nerve in her body screaming, she understood she was just getting started. What horrors awaited them in the depths of darkness, and could they hope to survive the unthinkable? The shadows surged forward, their forms melding into a mass of gleaming eyes and gnashing teeth. "You'll see," Greg's voice echoed, weaving through the chaos like a dark lullaby, "we'll take everything from you." Sarah's heart raced, she could feel the horror winding around her, a snake ready to strike. "Ethan, Lily, hold on tight," she commanded, her voice cutting through the din as she backed away, drawing her children closer. Each step was a battle against the weight of despair pulling at her legs. The book began to thrum, rhythmically pulsing with warmth, igniting a flame of courage deep within her. She thought of the faces she saw, those she had left behind. No, she unleashed a scream, forcing the shadows to falter for a heartbeat. But it was fleeting. They pressed harder, darkness swirling around them like a tempest. You can't fight your fate. They jeered. Sarah lifted the book high, desperate to channel the light within. Its glow illuminated her children's faces, their eyes wide with fear. We'll face this together. She cried out, feeling the vibrations of their shared fear transform into a fierce resolve. Suddenly, a pale figure darted out, a familiar silhouette slipping through the shadows. Mom! It was Greg's sister, Katie, her image flickering, like a candle against a gust. You must listen, stay back. Greg howled, terror bleeding into his voice as he lunged toward Katie, hands reaching, grasping. But she was lost in a flicker of light, swallowed by the darkness. Stay away from her. Ethan shouted, his small voice slicing through the terror. In that instant, something inside Sarah ignited a protective surge that sprang forth with the force of a raging wildfire. She felt the warmth of the book intensify, flooding her with energy. You don't belong here. She roared, the air around her crackling with power. The flames radiated outward, crashing against the malevolent tide. Shadows hissed and recoiled, but more emerged, their figures expanding like a dark ocean. You think you can resist the current? They said in unison, their voices dripping with disdain. It's more than just me, Sarah called, her voice steadying. It's all of us. Bright tendrils of light whipped about them, illuminating the faces of lost souls behind the shadows. Help us! They shrieked, desperation flooding through their hollow eyes, and there it was a moment of connection, a web of shared history binding them. For the first time, Sarah felt their sorrow seep into her, mingling with her anger. We can break free. She proclaimed, the book glowing brighter, resonating with each heartbeat. The shadows screamed, their furious howls pounding against her ears. You invite our wrath upon you. They spat, with Greg's figure warping. This is only the beginning. Suddenly, the ground lurched beneath them. Cracks split the floor, willingly opening up like jaws ready to swallow both light and darkness. No! Sarah screamed, as the chasm widened, a yawning mouth beneath her feet. Ethan clutched at his sister, panic rising in frantic gasps. Mom! What's happening? This has to count for something. She channeled the book's light toward the fissure. The shadows surged closer, but Sarah pushed against the darkness with everything she had. We're stronger than this. But doubt crept back in, seeping into her bones. Would it be enough? Just as the wedge widened further, a horrifying thought gripped her. Had she truly opened a door she couldn't close? Sarah! Greg's tainted voice carried a taunting edge. What have you unleashed? You've only weakened your resolve. As shadowy tendrils snaked toward them, one among them manifesting a distorted version of Lily, Sarah's heart shattered. Mommy, the figure crooned, its voice too sweet, too familiar. A desperate cry clawed at Sarah's throat. Lily's right here. She spat defiantly, battling the flood of grief and horror. The corrupted echoes laughed, a defiant sound reverberating against her heart. A surge of terror mixed with defiance. We're not done yet. She insisted, the light from the book pulsating more intensely, filling the room with an electric rage, and in that moment, she realized they needed to confront the darkness, not just fight against it. What secrets did the shadows hold? And could they truly overcome the horrors woven into the very fabric of their past? The shadows writhed closer, a frenzy of darkness ready to consume them all. The walls screamed with the weight of history, and as the light flickered, something shifted again. Prepare yourself for what comes next, the shadows warned, laughter echoing, and Sarah could only stand firm, bracing for the storm yet to break. The ground shook violently, sending tremors through Sarah's legs, as the shadowy mass pulsed against her, hungry and insatiable. Ethan and Lily clung to her waist, their faces pale as they stared into the abyss. The book in her hands crackled fiercely, its light flaring in time with her racing heart. "Stay close. We can't let them touch us." The shadows danced, their forms twisting unnaturally, as if mocking her every word. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to find a moment of calm in the chaos. "We have to push back," she whispered, mostly to herself. Together. The air felt thick, charged with fear and desperation, but beneath it, an ember of hope flickered. With one fluid motion, she swung the book up high, directing its brilliance at the gaping chasm. "Light, hear me. We are stronger than this darkness." But the shadows laughed, a sound both chilling and intimate, reverberating in her bones. "You think you can wield it? You are so naive. You've only deepened your despair." The ground cracked wider, jagged teeth of earth threatening to swallow them whole. "Mom, I don't want to fall," Lily cried, tears pooling in her innocent eyes. Sarah felt ice grip her heart, a parental fear unlike anything she had ever known. "I won't let that happen." With renewed strength, she pressed forward, feeling the warmth of her children against her, a shield against the encroaching dark. The moment of connection they'd shared infused her with determination. "Help us!" Sarah shouted into the void, her voice mixing with the cries of the souls that lingered in the shadows. Behind her, the specters wailed, their voices becoming a haunting choir. "You cannot save them, or yourself," they sang, the melody twisting into a horrific lullaby. The book pulsed rapidly, each thrum resonating within her. She felt the combined energy of all the lost souls unite, spiraling upwards, entwining with her own resolve. "Yes. We will break the cycle," she yelled, swinging the book like a sword against the tide of shadows, the light expanding, pushing against the overwhelming darkness. But doubt clawed at her mind. What if it wasn't enough? What if the shadows were right? A brief glance at Ethan and Lily, so fragile, so trusting, ignited a rage deep inside her. "Get away from us," she stammered, her voice rising amidst the shrieks. "You're nothing but whispers, figments of fear." With a defiant roar, Sarah directed the light more forcefully, and the shadows shrieked, pulling back from the book's brilliance. For the first time, a path began to clear, the overwhelming grip of darkness easing slightly, but Greg's voice broke through the veil once more, thick with malice. "What happens when the light fades, Sarah? Will you be ready for what follows?" "Silence!" she screamed, but his words planted seeds of terror in her heart. It was then she felt it, a chilling draft curling around her feet, creeping upwards. The shadows twisted, morphing, and beneath the darkness, a gaping void beckoned. The air thickened, a palpable tension, palpable enough to slice through. Sarah felt the weight of all that was left undone, haunting past mistakes, decisions made, families torn apart. Suddenly, she understood. She wasn't just fighting for her children. She was fighting for herself. The light from the book surged again, illuminating the faces behind the shadowy figures, each one twisted by sorrow. "No one deserves to be trapped," Sarah cried, her voice raw, flooding with purpose. "Fate is ours to shape." But the thundering laughter followed. "And what if we shape it back?" they taunted, and Sarah felt the air shift. The ground trembled again, not just from the fissure but from some unseen force awakening beneath. A revelation struck her. She had no clue what lay beneath this place, only devastation waiting to break free. As the shadows swirled, a new shape emerged in their midst, larger and more menacing. "You think you can face us alone?" it boomed, a figure cloaked in grief and wrath, the embodiment of every lost hope. "Sarah!" Ethan's voice pierced through her thoughts, gasping with fear. "What do we do?" The figure towered. Darkness swirling thick around it. She felt it leeching her power, and she needed to act fast. They were up against something unfathomably fierce. "Hold on, everyone!" she shouted, wisdom mixing with instinct. We can't break apart. If we do, the darkness wins. The shadows howled, swirling greedily as they closed in again. In that heartbeat before the storm hit, Sarah clutched the book like a lifeline. We face it together. And standing before the abyss, grasping her children tight, she faced the darkness, breath trembling. Would it be enough? Or had they awakened something far more sinister than they ever imagined? The force of darkness pressed in like a tidal wave, threatening to swallow them whole. But Sarah's heart ignited with fierce determination, a flame forged from love and loss, and a palpable sense of purpose. We can do this. She shouted, her voice ringing clear against the chaos. We are not alone. Ethan and Lily grasped her legs tighter, their small bodies quaking with fear, but their eyes those bright little beacons burned with a glimmer of hope. Just as uncertainty clawed at Sarah's mind, the warmth from the book surged through her, pulsing like a heartbeat. Together. She screamed once more. Together. The shadows recoiled slightly as if recoiling from the force of their connection. It was a weak flicker in the midst of chaos, but one she would nurture into a blaze. As she stood firm, the colossal shadow at the center seemed to falter, momentarily caught off guard by their united front. What foolishness is this? It thundered, voice booming like rolling thunder, corrupted memories swirling around it, flaring like a storm of rage and anguish. You think you can fight your truth? The whispers of lost souls encircled them, rising like an overwhelming tide. You belong to us, join us, they breathed, calling from the depths where despair lay coiled. No. Sarah bellowed, shaking her head, unwilling to allow the past to define her. You're wrong. I've lost too much already. I'm not joining you. With that declaration, she felt her children's grips tighten, as though their spirits entwined around hers, fortifying the purity of their love. The book exploded with glowing light, illuminating the room as if the dawn had broken inside the lighthouse itself. Push it back. She shouted, the need to protect her children electrifying her courage. They held hands tightly, forming a circle of light and warmth, culminating to counteract the crushing despair around them. The shadows writhed, their shape distorting amid the powerful glow. Feel your souls. The darkness hissed, they are full of fear. Every step of mine has been paved by fear, Sarah replied, resolve like iron in her voice, and those steps have led me to you. Together, we wield the power of our love, our connection. With that, the light intensified, radiating outward, an explosion that momentarily froze the figures of bitterness and past regrets. Faces from forgotten memories flickered in the light, screaming, panicking, and then fading back as realization struck the chains binding them were now loosening. No. The colossal shadow loomed closer, flexing its dark arms, but the warmth flowed through Sarah, brighter than any flame, enveloping her and her children in an electric surge of courage. It's time for you to go. No. They roared, a cacophony of disturbing sounds blending wrongfully in the air, your children are not safe. Your past will consume you. As their voices enveloped her, Sarah closed her eyes for a heartbeat, envisioning the souls trapped here and the pain woven into their lives. It was true, she held regrets, she had lost herself in grief and guilt, but she could acknowledge that weight, allowing it to be part of her present without letting it rob her future. I see you, Sarah whispered, conviction tingling her nerves, reaching into the shadows, I hear your pain. But I choose to live. No more running from you. Ethan and Lily began to chant with her, their tiny voices elevating strength into the cyclone of light. Together. Together. They shouted fiercely, igniting her spirit like a wildfire. The shadows writhed and screamed in anguish. The darkness fractured under their unified force, a kaleidoscope of light cascading through the abyss, scattering dread into oblivion. As everything exploded into brilliance, the edges of the chasm widened, and darkness clung desperately, but Sarah pressed forward, refusing to cave. And then, all at once, the lighthouse trembled, it convulsed, quaking under the purging impetus of the light as the shadows began to diminish, uprooted by shared love. Shadows melted into nothingness, whispers winding down into silence. But just as she thought she had won, the specter of Greg returned, more ominous and twisted than before, torn between anger and sorrow. "You're not free, Sarah. You have only postponed the inevitable." "No." Without hesitation, Sarah raised the book one final time. "You cannot hold my children hostage anymore, you malignant memory. We break this cycle now." Light engulfed her, a radiant explosion pushing fiercely against the lines of darkness. With a final cry, she released everything she had: pain, loss, love, a stream of emotions cascading through the air, wrapping around her children and propelling their spirits upward. And as the last shreds of shadow dissolved in the purity of their collective love, the lighthouse trembled violently, its foundation cracking under the weight of released souls. In that blinding light, clarity enveloped Sarah, and the lighthouse itself seemed to sigh, the sounds of despair evaporating like morning mist. As peace settled, Sarah blinked through tears, looking to her children. Relief washed over her as she clutched them close, fear dissipating like the shadows now retreating into nothingness. "There's always light, even in the darkest of places," Sarah whispered, as the lighthouse flickered once more, steadied by a gentle pulse of hope. They stepped outside, hand in hand, blinking against the bright dawn illuminating Marlin's Cove. Torn yet renewed, they stood at the edge, feeling the gentle waves lap at their feet. The darkness had lifted, leaving only the light of tomorrow. "Mom?" Ethan asked, glancing up at her, "Is it really over?" A genuine smile broke through Sarah's tear-stained cheeks, warmth blooming in her chest. "Yes, my love. It's over, but we carry our truth forward. Together." And with their hearts united, they stepped into the welcoming rays of the sun, free at last. It was time to embrace the new chapter waiting for them, a fresh start filled with hope and unspoken promise. If you found this story heart-pounding, bone-chilling, and utterly unforgettable, don't wait any longer. You need to subscribe now to our channel so you won't miss the next exclusive tales that will leave you breathless. Smash that like button right now to feed the algorithm and make sure others experience these incredible stories. We want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Your thoughts matter. And please, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how we can conquer darkness and cherish the light together. This is the moment to show your support. Don't ignore the call, take action now.